So many conversations, so many treaties, so many people involved who are not necessarily the people that we're talking about. And we can see that reflected today because now what we have is a global conversation that's going on and there are alliances.
Really gives off the perception that this is being set up to be base bidding for the Israeli argument of entitlement. This is there is document history of how existing occupants of the land, that's the Palestinians, were driven out of their land, not biblical time. I'm talking about living memory. Forget the fictional narrative of the Bible. You can go on the YouTube and watch the videos of Palestinians being kicked out of their homes. Now that's Kenyan Jewish comment, and that's how he feels. Annette, back to you.
What I would say about the way that history is taught, while it is true that it's taught a certain way, we are in a point in time where you can Google certain things. You can actually look up these histories. And my thing, regardless of what I'm talking about, is to never get so nitty gritty into the technical terminologies and the dates. I want to create a point of reference that can be familiar. And that was the point of my comment, is just to give us a landing point, and also to help people understand how other people are thinking when we're having this discussion, because it's very important to understand that. So if you are on one side and you have no understanding of the other side, then it's very difficult for there to be progress in that conversation. As far as you know, if we're taking sides, that wasn't really the point of my comment. It was just to talk about how did we come to this concept of Israel as a nation, and then the Zionism that has been birthed from that, and this culture of people going back to a homeland, and if you have a birthright to go back there. So currently, if you are a Jewish person, then you can go to Israel, and there shouldn't be an issue for you. And if you should want to resettle there, it should be very easy for you. Like, these are things that were established based on this concept of Zionism.
Does that include, you know, like black?
And
1 second, Mika. No, 1 second. I'll give you a chance, Mika. Does that include, you know, like black Jewish people? Or?
So my experience with those who speak specifically on diversity within the Jewish community, especially the black population that's here in the United States. One of the things that they discuss is that it is true that there is discrimination against them. One, because there is an assumption that you are not Jewish because you don't present, like I said, the examples that I gave, right? So how things are depicted in the media. It's not just the Jews who we think look one way. Even when you think about an Arab person, or if you think about a Muslim person, what image comes to mind? When the reality is Muslims are very diverse and they look very many different ways, right? But that doesn't mean that that's how the world considers it. Media has a big impact on what the general population believes a certain group is like, and that propaganda has an effect then on how we behave towards them, and even in situations like this.
Okay, Mika, you had something that you wanted to add.
Yeah, and I think what I wanted to say that now the thing is, and the reason why the Zionism which has been created right now is actually one of the most fought things, especially in that reason, is because number one, you are allowing other people who are not from that region to go back and claim that this is their home, while moving away people who are from that region to create space for these new people. And number two, let's not forget that in that region, there were Jews already who are of Arab descent, and a lot of them, and they also face discrimination. And that's the issue, that most of that why they're fighting even that Zionism, that the Zionism that it is right now, is that it's not an inclusivity of all Jews. It's like there's a bunch of, or it's like there's a picking or a nitpicking of it. When it comes to Israel as what it was written on the papers and Israel as what it is right now, they're two different things.
Okay. So there's a concept of,
and it has nothing to do with religion.
So
just to say that there's nothing to do with Judaism or Islam or being or Islam. What is happening right now is basically Israeli versus Palestine versus other people. So they try to hide it behind religion, but it has nothing to do with religion.
Okay.
Because there are Jews who actually are discriminated in that region, and the Jews who actually don't believe that what Israel is doing is supposed to be done the way it is.
So there's this concept called Zionism, which is I believe the concept of people, of the Jewish faith, like going back to a particular homeland, and I think from my reading it says it was birthed around the 1890s, the 1880s.
Rothschild.
And then it went through this process because at that time Palestine was still under Ottoman rule. It was still under Turkish Ottoman rule. Then the First World War happened. Now the interesting thing that in the First World War, now that I've been learning, is that the British were very good at, like at that time, they were very good at being deceptive and setting people against each other. It's a thing that they did in Africa, and it's the same thing that they went and did
divide and rule
in the Middle East.
Divide and rule, yeah.
Yes. So at that time, the Ottoman Empire, that's actually the last. For those who don't know, that was the last Muslim caliphate, because it came to an end after the end of the First World War. So the Ottoman Empire was kind of, and at that time the caliphate was kind of like a place where the ruler of the Islamic world was. So at the time, the British went and set the Turks and the Arabs against each other. At the time, the Sharif of Makkah, because the caliphate had moved from the Arabs and it went to the Turks. So they promised the Caliph of Makkah that we're going to give you the caliphate back. And then they went and promised something different to the Turks. So they made them, they convinced the Arabs to go fight against the Turks. And that's how everything, came falling apart. And then there was something called the Balfour Declaration, which was the first document that was established, I think, in 1917 to kind of set the ball rolling for a Jewish state. So there's a lot of details in this.
So many details,
yes.
So many conversations, so many treaties, so many people involved who are not necessarily the people that we're talking about. And we can see that reflected today, because now what we have is a global conversation that's going on, and there are alliances, right? So the United States has its alliances, and then we have, Jordan, and then we have Saudi Arabia, and then we have Egypt, and there are a lot of countries that are involved. And so I think it's important, first and foremost, for me, whenever I'm having a conversation on this topic, to understand that there are a lot of decision makers who are involved, but unfortunately the biggest impact now are going to be the people, right? So currently in Gaza, we have individuals who are not Hamas. Hamas is not the entire, is not all of Gaza, right?
Yes.
The majority of people there are not political leaders. They are not part of Hamas. And we know this because about 53% of the population in Gaza are children. So they can't be political leaders. And if that is the case, then that means that, the majority of people who are being affected, and this is always the case, are going to be the people who are not the leadership who's making the decisions, right? They didn't have a referendum and decide this is how we're going to attack, when we're going to attack, and so on and so forth. Same thing in Israel. There are individuals who are making decisions. And with this last attack that occurred, the prime minister is losing popularity, because there was this big part of his, and I don't want to say his name wrong, there's this big part of his campaign about peace in Israel and about how he's going to create order. And so when this happened, that really took a blow to all of his political statements and promises that he's made to the people who are there. And I think it is important for us to create safe environments if that's your job to do so,